Hey, what is up, my friends? I'm Toby Wayne. This is Toby Wayne Studios. Today, I'm going to be showing you how I do my repairs on the sides of my sculptures. I like to leave a little bit of texture on these sculptures that I do. I think it just kind of gives a nice little decorative look to the sculpture itself. I like that texture and that detail. This was done with Bondo. I just mixed up Bondo and then spread it on there, and then I take a popsicle stick and then I'll press into it and pull it up so it raises it up, and then once it cures, then I go back in with a sander and knock all that down so it leaves this great texture here, which I really like the texture. But and then on this one here, I did a smaller texture to the Burn Man bust, which, by the way, is going to be getting molded up, I think, today or sometime this week. With that being said, this is an original sculpt here that I'm going to sell just as the originals. I'm not going to be making a mold of this one. The more I got to looking at it, these undercuts are pretty deep, and I also like the idea of just doing original one-off sculpts once in a while for those that enjoy original work to have in their collection. But as you can see, I bake it on this just wooden block with a nail. It's not a big deal. It just kind of holds it in place. But it gives me some, flat surface to work with, and then I'll pour up a base in resin, and then I'll just adhere it to that. So that way it gives me an opportunity to kind of work on this as it is. But you can see how rough this is down here. There's a folding of the clay that's weird. You got these little pinholes from when I'm sculpting, and then I'll just wipe my clay off and I'll just jab it into there. But so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how I get these textured undersides to these sculptures. I do have to yet to go in and clean this one up a little bit. I'm going to reshape his teeth. That's the beauty of Super Sculpey or polymer clays. You can bake them and then go back and clean them up and then re-add to them. Also, I have been really working on learning how to get these sculptures baked without them cracking. And I believe it was a viewer, I think it's Cindy, I think she's the one that told me about this. So Cindy, if you're watching, thank you so much for sharing this information with me. You basically you put the sculpture into a cold oven and work your temperature up to the 275, and then once it bakes for however long you need it to, you turn the oven off, and then it just let it cool down on its own, and that really reduces the risks of cracks in your Sculpey, which is fantastic. I have worked with this stuff for years, and I was unaware of that. And it makes total sense now that I look back on it. I'm thinking, well, that does make a lot of sense to put it into a cold oven and then let it run up to temp and hold it there and let it bake, and then just turn it off and let it sit for a couple hours to let it cool on its own. And this was one of them done that way. And I also did the Burn Man the same way. I just ran them up and then baked them, and then added this on last, or it was the last step. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. I use my Magic Sculpt, and you get equal portions of Magic Sculpt. And this is a pretty good size amount of material I'm going to have to use, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of eyeball this. So I'm going to say maybe something like that, maybe. I always like to knead it a little bit because it does have the oils you can see separating in there. So I always like to just get kind of a nice consistency. I think that kind of helps all the materials gel again. If those oils separate, might not be a good thing. Let me see if I can do this without knocking my camera system over. So then you get your equal side of your base here. This is the resin portion of it, and that's the hardener. So we're fairly close to the same amount, which is good. Let me see if I can get this off my fingers. This stuff, the resin portion of this is actually sticky, and then the hardener is actually the nice non-stick. But anyway, yeah, so you get equal sides. And then you just start to blend them together, and it will you have about an hour and a half, I want to say, to work with this stuff. I think it says you have longer than that, but I think temperature times and stuff, temperatures in the studios will affect the time. If it's hotter, which it is currently in the studio, it does kick a little faster. So I like to just give this a good kneading here to make sure that everything's incorporated properly. And also, you're going to need some water and a brush, because that's going to help you smooth it over. This stuff is smoothed with water, so that's the nice thing about this. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just kind of fill this area in. I'll just start to kind of smooth this around. And I just kind of fill it in underneath. See if I can keep this in frame. And you can always double check it too to make sure that it's flush with your base, so that you're not overlaying it, so that it doesn't want to hold uneven on your base, which I guess isn't a big deal if you've got a nice grinder or a hand sander or whatever. So basically I just fill that in a little bit there, and I kind of smooth up those edges a touch. I kind of just start to shape it a little bit. And basically then what I do, this is the fun part, I like to come in and actually, you know what, I see a little area right here in the front that I'm not happy with. Okay, so now that I got that laid on there, then what I do is I come in with a rock or pretty much any kind of texture you want to add. I went out and found this in my driveway. I just really like the rock texture. You can use anything, tree bark, orange peel. I mean, you name it. If it's got a texture on it, you know, you can use it. And you basically just come in with your texture rock or whatever, and then you just gently press and roll, and you can even change the angles of how you're doing it, and it'll give you different pressures and textures that you can push into your epoxy clay, and it just leaves this great little texture here. And I'm a big fan of texture. I've always enjoyed applying textures to my sculptures, and there's just something about it that just adds depth to it. And like I said, I used to use Bondo, and I still will occasionally, depending on, you know, if I've got a larger sculpt, I'll use Bondo because it's a little cheaper than using this epoxy clay. This stuff kind of gets spendy, so I'll use Bondo, and that works too, but Bondo stinks to high heavens. So yeah, you just roll it and it'll just make this great little texture, and you can kind of keep going over all the little areas here, and each time you go over it using a different direction, it'll add a different look and feel, so that's cool. Kind of gives it this unique texture. And you can even go in with different rocks and different, you know, texture stamps or whatever it is. I've got texture stamps here, which I like these, but unfortunately, they're very hard to work with because the material is so I don't know. It's just hard to get in there and do textures with these. For some reason, I prefer the rigid material. It's very strange, a rigid rock or whatever. It's just odd. But anyway, that's just my preference. You may actually love to work with those stamps. But yeah, for me, I just like to have that rock. So anyway, then what I'll do is I'll come in with my water and I will gently blend the seams between the Super Sculpey and the new epoxy clay, and that will help to kind of soften those edges between the two, meeting of the two. Again, I'll just blend this. I can apply a little bit of pressure to kind of push that epoxy onto the Sculpey. And I'll just go around and blend it till I'm happy. And what you can do is you can either leave this untouched or you can just kind of run some water across it to soften those edges a little bit. I kind of like to soften them a touch, especially if I'm going to be molding it. In this case, I'm not going to be, but it's kind of nice just to give it a little bit of a softening of these materials here. And that's pretty much it. From there, I'll just go ahead and press it down so it, you know, will lock those edges down and just kind of blend them together. But yeah, that's pretty much how I blend everything in. It's pretty simple, pretty easy, and then this will cure, and it'll take about, I don't know, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours. I could, it'll start to harden up, and then I would actually be able to paint it if I wanted. I mean, it's pretty durable stuff. So anyway, yeah, that's how I do it, and then it'll kick off, and I'll just be able to get a base poured up for it, and then I'll go back and clean all those up, and you know, just paint it up and or mold it if that's what I was going to be doing. But like I said, this is going to be an original. So anyway, thank you guys so much for checking this video out. I hope it helps. I sure appreciate all the new subscribers. You guys are beyond awesome. I truly appreciate it. So thank you so much for those new subscribers. And if you're brand new, welcome to the channel. Feel free to leave any questions and or comments in the comment section below. And as usual, I will catch you all in the very next video.